Alright, 8-2, and if you remember 8-2, we split it up into 2 days, but I'm going to put it all into one video, okay? I'm going to leave the writing that we did in class up. That way, this video will go a little bit faster, okay? Hopefully, you'll be able to follow along. It's going to be very similar to 8-1. So I have 8-1's notes right here, ready to go for me to kind of reference them. So, factoring by distributive property and grouping. Okay, so here's part 1. Okay, we now have 12mp plus 80m squared. Okay, what we're basically doing, and I got this ready to go, we're going to find the greatest common factor of our two things. Now, these were just two separate monomials. Okay, in this one, these are being added together. So, still got to factor them all out. 12 and 6, and 6 is 2 and 3. So 2 times 2 times 3, and then m and p. 80 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. M squared is m times m. Now, we're looking to see what they have in common. I got a pair of 2's, another pair of 2's, and a m in common. So 2 times 2 times m became 4m. Okay, now on this one here, that's where we stopped. But 8-2 a little bit different. Okay, our leftovers, okay, are going to go here on the inside of parentheses. So 3 times p will go there. This lovely little plus sign kind of comes down here because we're adding them together. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20, and that m goes here. Now at 8-1. I didn't worry about the leftovers, but we could see that, let's see, we crossed out the 2's, the 2's, the 2's, x, y, z, z. So on top, this 2 and this y would have been part of our leftovers, and 3 times z would have been part of our leftovers, okay? We're actually going to be using those here, okay? So wherever you get your greatest common factor outside of the parentheses, everything left over goes on the inside. Okay, so on this one, 30mp plus m squared p minus 6p. Now, a greatest common factor, like we learned, let's see if I can find the page, on this one here, it's got to appear in all three of them for it to be a greatest common factor. So, same thing here. We factor it all out. 2 times 3 times 5 times m times p, m times p. Remember, negative numbers are -1 times that. So -1, 2, and 3, and p. The only thing they have in common is this little p here at the end. So that's all we're going to pull out. Sometimes all you can pull out is one variable. Sometimes all you can pull out is one little bitty number 2 or something like that. Okay? It's not always going to be 2x or something like that. Okay? So all your leftovers go back on the inside. Our numbers multiplied to 30, and we have the m, so 30m. M times m gave me m squared, and the numbers multiplied to -6. And if you just look, if we got rid of that one, got rid of that, got rid of that, that's what we pulled out. 30m plus m squared minus 6 is what we had left over. So we're finding the greatest common factor. Leftovers go inside. Okay. This one here, 24 was 2 and 12, 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. 48 was 2 and 24, and we just factored 24. And here's a hint. If 24 appears here and here, there's a really good chance that's going to be one of the things in common, which in this case it is. We have this extra 2 over here. This has an x and this has a y, so they don't get pulled out. The only thing we can pull out from 24x and 48y is the 24. We have an x left over, and we have 2y left over. Now, to double check, you can always distribute. 24x gives me 24x. 24 times 2y is 48y, so we're in good shape. This doesn't always work because it won't tell you if you brought everything out. And if I would have missed the 3's and only brought out an 8, 8 times 3x and 8 times 6y, it'd still give me my answers. But it's a pretty good way to kind of double check. It won't work every single time, but it'll get you close. Okay. Now we got factoring by grouping. Okay. It's tough to see behind all this. Okay. But we have 6ax plus 3ay. I said, well, what do they have in common? Well, they have an a, so we pull out an a. And then 3 and 6 are in common, so we pulled out a 3, which means this just became a 2. So I have 2x plus y left over. My leftovers go in here. Okay. Over here, 2bx plus by. What do they have in common? Well, just the b. So we pull out this b, 2x plus y. Now, y'all notice that my parentheses were exactly the same. And I said, very good. That is half of our answer, 2x plus y. You're matching parentheses, which your goal is to get them to match every single time when you're factoring by grouping, okay, is half of your answer. The other half, as you can see in yellow, is just the stuff on the outside, 3a plus b. So 3a plus b, okay? This one here, we had to be careful. X squared plus 2x, there's an x behind there. I was able to pull out an x and have x plus 2 left over. Well, this already says x plus 2. Don't just go, oh, okay, x plus 2, which matches over here, and then just have x times x plus 2. That only gets you half it. You have to pull out something, and if there's nothing in common, our greatest common factor is 1. Okay? That 1's very important because now we have x plus 2 because of our matching parentheses, and x plus 1. This would be one where we kind of foil. This is stuff we get into in 8-3 and beyond. X times x gave me x squared. 2 times x gave me 2x. X times 1 gave me x, and 2 times 1 gave me 2. Normally I'd put those together and make it x squared plus 3x plus 2, but we'll get there in 8-3. But make sure when you're group factoring this, if there's nothing to pull out, you have to pull out that 1. Oh, this one's really tough to see. I scribbled all over this. I'm sorry. Let's see if we can't move this a little. Okay, so we had 12ax plus 3xz. Okay, what do they have in common? Well, the x was easy. They both have an x. And 3 goes into 12, so I take the 3 out also, and this is just left as 4. So 4a plus z is what's left over. So we are trying to match 4a plus z. 4ay plus yz. This one's easy. Pull out the y, and I have 4a plus z left over. 4a plus z is one of my answers, and then 3x plus y, my leftovers, are my other answer. Okay? Okay, 8-2 part 2. So now would be a good time to stretch it out, or whatever, and we're back. Okay, solving equations by factoring. It's going to be similar to the first part of 8-2, a little bit easier. It's definitely different, which is why we separated these into 2 days. Okay. Example here, 9x squared plus x. Okay. They didn't give any trinomials or anything like that. We're going to work with that in 8-3. Okay. But we need to factor these if they're not already factored. So here's a hint. If you see parentheses, it's factored. If you do not see parentheses, you cannot factor it. The other thing, ooh, where did I write it? I wrote it really big on everything except maybe this one. Yeah, okay. Here's the most important part. You absolutely have to have an equal 0. So if you have an equal sign and it does not say equal 0, we have to have equal 0. That will come in part later, okay? But 9x squared plus x, what do they have in common? Well, just an x. So if I'm losing one of these x's, I'm left with 9x. And if I'm taking that whole thing, I'm left with this 1. This 1 is important. 9x plus 1 and x. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to multiply to get 0. And if you remember anything about 0, anything times 0 becomes 0. So we have two factors here. We got x times 9x plus 1. So if we can make just one of these factors 0, whether it's this one or this one, then we will multiply to 0. So we are going to get two separate answers on this. Okay? To get it, we're going to take x, set it equal to 0, and 9x plus 1, set equal to 0. You will have two different equations. Very important. Okay? X equals 0, that's easy. It's solved for us. 9x plus 1 equals 0, this just becomes a two-step equation. Subtract 1, divide by 9, x equals -1/9. Okay? We have two answers here that we could plug in here to get 0, or truthfully here to get 0. Okay. This is, well, let's plug it in here. Okay. When x equals 0, this is 0. 9 times 0 is 0, plus 1. I have 0 times 1, still get 0. The negative 1/9 takes this and changes it to negative 1. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0. All that is 0. We're good. We're trying to find our two zeros. Now, put your answer. We want them in these braces. Now, if you can't draw those fancy braces, I told my class squiggly lines on the side will be okay. What is not okay is parentheses, because if I see parentheses with something, I'm going to think that's an XY point, and we don't have an XY point. We have two answers. Okay? Don't use the brackets either, the square ones, because those are basically another set of parentheses. Squiggly lines on either side will work just fine for me. Okay. Parentheses means this is already factored, so I'm ready to set up my two equations. 3m equals 0 and m minus 4 equals 0. Well, 3m equals 0. Divide both sides by 3. M is 0. That's easy. M minus 4 is 0. What minus 4 gives me 0? The only answer is 4. So 0 and 4, my two squiggly lines there. Okay. This one's also factored for us. 4m plus 8 and m minus 3. It would normally be in maybe a polynomial like this, but they were nice enough to factor for us. Okay, 4m plus 8 equals 0, so subtract 8, divide by 4, m is negative 2. M minus 3 equals 0, so m has to be 3. So it is not always where 0 is one of our answers. Okay, 0 happened to be an answer here because we didn't have any kind of plus or minus, and we didn't have any kind of plus or minus. But on this one, they both had some sort of plus or minus something. We were able to get some sort of answer. So it's not always going to be 0. We're going to take our two factors, set them equal to 0, and solve from there. Okay. Now, like I said, the most important part is getting equals 0. Well, here I have equals 28y. That doesn't equal 0. But all I have to do is add or subtract this to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 28y, because 28y minus 28y equals 0, and we're good to go. So I have 4y squared minus 28y, and we're ready to factor this out just like we did the 9x squared at the very beginning. 4 times y, and 4 times negative 7 times y. I could pull out a 4y from each one. Now on these, I will tell you, these little binomials and solving, we're going to be at least pulling out a variable. So if you don't pull out a variable, you'll have like 4 equals 0, and that's not going to work. Okay, so pull out at least a y, and we're only going to pull out 1 because we're not quite to square root stuff yet. And see if they have a number in common. 4 and 4 times 7 is 28, so we'll leave the negative 7 in there and the y. So y minus 7 is what's left over when we bring it out. So our two equations, 4y equals 0, so y equals 0. Y minus 7 equals 0, which means y has to be 7. There's our two answers. Okay. That's all of 8-2. It's virtually two different lessons kind of combined in one. Okay, and you'll see a lot of this kind of stuff, this equals 0 stuff, and all that factoring back here, this group factoring stuff, we may see again later in 8 what is this, 8-2, maybe 8-4. There's different ways of solving some stuff, and we may use group factoring again. Okay, so, but that's all of 8-2. Sorry it felt like it went really quick. If you need to, just rewatch the video, and hopefully that'll help. If not, just ask us questions in class or come see us at lunch or whatever it may be.